Hello there, sorry about the delay, having issues with YouTube this morning. Welcome to this Quirkos webinar. This is the first of the new academic year. I hope you're all doing as well as you can at the moment. Today the idea was we're going to take you step by step through all the different aspects of using Quirkos, from downloading, from signing up an account, to creating a project, importing data, and doing a little bit of coding and analysis. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I've got another window open so I can have a look and see if you've got anything you want me to cover. But for now I'm just going to get going and show you how to get Quirkos. So the first thing to do is to go to our website. Now you can download Quirkos directly on the front page for yourself if you're using the offline version. Now Quirkos is identical for Windows, Mac or Linux, so it doesn't matter what platform you're running on. And there's no registration needed if you're using it in offline mode. Now basically Quirkos has two different ways that you can use it. So there are static licenses, that's the offline mode, and that's where the data is stored only on your own computer. And there's also a cloud subscription, and so it's exactly the same software, but this allows you to save the data on our secure servers, and it means that you can collaborate, you can share projects with other people, and you can also work on as many computers as you like, and your data is always available there. Now if you want to trial the cloud subscription, you do need to register and create an account for that. It will create a link after you've downloaded it where you can do that, and you do need to provide a credit card details. If you choose to do the ongoing subscription, that will be billed after 14 days. But there's no subscription and no credit card required for the offline license. You can just go straight to Get Quirkos and download directly here for your operating system. Now, when you've downloaded and installed the software, you'll get a screen that looks a bit like this, and basically there are two options again. So if you want to work on the Quirkos cloud, which is what we're going to do today, there's a space for email address and password. Now if you didn't create an account yet, you can click on the Manage Account button, and that will take you to the sign up page. And you can sign up for an account here. You can also log in and make sure that you do anything else that you need to. So you can change, you can download your projects here, you can download different projects, you can change the sharing options and who you share them with. You can also cancel your subscription at any time, reinstate your subscription at any time, and change any of your contact details if you need to. So everything is possible there on the account page. But the software itself requires you to download and install the software to be working on it. And if you don't want to use the online version, then you can use the offline version here. So you can just click on the Continue with Local Storage button, and then that will let you keep going. It'll give you a dialog showing how long you've got on your trial. You can keep working on your projects there. But I'm going to sign in today. If I can remember my password. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is create a new project. So you can see I've got my list of projects here that I've worked on before. And I've also got here some ones which have been shared with me. So these are projects which I didn't create, I don't own, but other people have shared with me to collaborate and work on together. So I'm going to now click on the New Project button. We're going to give it the project a name, and we'll call this Smartphone Example Project. Because today we're going to be looking at an example data set which you can download from our website, which is some of the made up interviews and some real journal articles about using smartphones in family settings and the impact that that has on family life and conflict. Very exciting source of qualitative data. Now you'll see there's two other options here. You can also password protect the project. So on top of your own account password, if you're using the cloud, this will also encrypt the data with a password for your individual project. And if you're working with confidential data, then this is a good idea. It ensures that it's encrypted fully and no one else can access it, even if they get access to your account. So there's the option there to password protect a particular project. There's also the option here for structured questions. Now in structured questions, that's when you're asking basically exactly the same question to each person. And that will be most useful if you're doing something like structured questionnaires or a survey. If you're bringing in survey data, which is in a very kind of regular format, and you're asking the same questions to everyone, then you can use a structured questions project. And that allows you to manage those set questions a lot easily and compare across them a lot easier. But we're going to turn that off for today, because the data we're going to work with is basically unstructured data, so it's from semi-structured interviews. So now we've chosen our title, click on New Project, and that will create a new project file for us, which is stored now on the cloud server. So on any computer where we install Quirkos and log in, we can now have access to our project. Now, this is the main view in Quirkos. We've got the main buttons up the top here. They're pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go through most of them in a minute. The main part of the screen is split in two, and you can change the width of the two settings with this slider here. The left side of the screen shows the codes, the themes, what we call quirks, sometimes also called nodes in Vivo. And on the right side of the screen, this is the text that we want to bring in. So Quirkos only works with qualitative text data, but you can bring it in from basically any source of text data. So probably the first thing you want to do is bring in some text, although you might start actually creating a framework first. That might be how you want to do it. So I'm going to click here on the plus button where it says click to add source. It says new blank source, select file, select from clipboard, from CSV, we'll bring in an entire folder. So most of these are pretty self-explanatory. So a new blank source is an empty source which you can edit and type in. And you can edit any of the sources in Quirkos. There's select a file, so that will allow you to bring in a file or multiple files which you have stored on your computer. And those can be text files, plain text files, rich text files, docx Word files, or PDF files. You can also bring in data from the clipboard, so you can copy and paste from some other type of file. And you also have CSV here, so that's for bringing in spreadsheet data, especially stuff that comes from a online survey, for example, or if you've got data already that you've inputted into Excel. You've also got an option here to put in an entire folder of sources. So I'm going to choose select files here. It's going to pop up. Yes, good, you can see that. And then I'm going to click on, I think, put desktop, yes, smartphone. And then you can see there are 4 sources that I have in this folder. So I've got PDF here, which is it's actually a journal article about the impact of smartphones and smartphone addiction on family life. And then there's 3 interviews with different people. So I'm going to select all of those here, click on open or import. It pops up and says 4 sources have been successfully imported. Now those sources have been copied into your project, so they're now stored in the cloud server and ready for you to access wherever you are. And you can move between those different sources using the tabs which are at the top of the view here. So we've got one for Chris and Lynn, and then there's the one smartphone article there. If we click on this button to the left of the tabs, that shows a list of all the different sources. Now Quirkos will only show 3 tabs at any one time, and it shows the 3 most recently used tabs. But if you want to choose another one, so we can't see Simon's here, we'll just click on Simon, and then that pops up the Simon tab, and that's slowly behind it. So there's Simon's source of data there. Now the next thing we can do is, so we could start coding now. We still could start creating some themes, doing some coding. But what I'm actually going to do is look at what we call the source properties, which is this second tab here. And the source properties are ways to categorize, group, and ultimately filter and explore the sources by different parameters, different attributes that we have for them. So to do that, we just click on the source properties tab here, and then we click on this little plus button here. It says quickly add new property, and we're just going to put in here property for age. So the property is basically the name of the category, and then the value is what the value for that category is for the particular person. So this person, so Simon, I think he's the son in the source. He's a teenager, I think. So I'll just have a quick look. Yes, that's him. So we're going to say that he's 12 years old. So we created a property which is called age, and then a value which only applies for Simon, which shows that he's 12 years old. And these properties and values can be anything. So they can be long, they can be text, they can be numeric numbers, absolutely anything. And we can use those later to group things and explore. So one of the other things we might do here is family role. I might say that this person is a child. Because then if we go to Chris's source here, so you'll see, okay, so we have the property for age and family role, because these were created for the whole project. We'll create a new value with this downward arrow here to say that this person is 32. And for the family role, another new value, which is this person is the father. And then if we go to Lynn's tab here, we have her age as 33 and the family role as mother. And so what this means now is that we can filter by family role or by age. In fact, one of the things we probably should have done is probably more easy if we have one called parent. But we can have both actually. So if we click on the properties and values editor here, we can allow family role to be multiple choice. So we can edit the properties and the values we have here. So we can remove other ones that we've entered. We can actually edit the text of them. So if we didn't want to say father, we want to say dad, then they would all change in that way. But what we've done here is change family role to be multiple choice. And what that means is that Lynn can be a parent and also a mother. Now why would we want to do that? Well, it basically gives us maximum flexibility. It means that we can filter for both parents, anyone who's a parent, whether they're a mother or a father, but we could also just look for responses just for the mothers or just the fathers in the project. So we go back to Chris's, he's now dad, not father, because we changed that, and we'll also put in parent. So now both of these belong to the Chris and Lynn, so they've both got two ways of describing their family role. So for example, Simon also might have child, and we might also have son if we wanted to look at the differences between the sons and the daughters. We can do that in the one property. There's no limit to the number of properties that you can have, and you can also get a little graph showing the distribution of them. One of the other things that we need to do in this project, because I've actually got different sources of data in here. So these are interviews, Simon, Chris and Lynn, but we also have, remember that smartphone article here, so that's actually a published journal article. So it's a different kind of data, and we might want to look at it in the same way. I always find it really handy to have sources of data together with the literature and the journal articles that we're working with, because you can code them in the same way. You can very quickly compare across and see where your data is contradicting or agreeing with the established literature. But it might be useful for us to be able to filter that again, so to see the results just from particular groups of people in the future. So I'm going to create a new property here which is called source type, it could be data type. We'll call this one interview. And then we'll go to Chris's and we'll call that an interview as well, and Lynn, and that's an interview as well. But now if we load the smartphone article, we add source type, and we'll add a new value which is for journal article. And that way we can see the results in the future of just stuff we've coded, which is just from interviews, maybe just from focus groups, just from a survey, or stuff that comes from the literature as well. So we could have textbooks, we could have Wikipedia, we could have anything here. So I might want to add some other properties here which will help us do the a literature review and bibliography in the future. So we could have, for example, author, and we could have Smith, A, and then Johnston, B, and then we could have year. So these wouldn't be applicable for the interviews, but are useful for us to, I think it's 2018 this one, useful for us to keep track of that. We might also want the title of the article as well. What's the title of the article? Parents' perceptions of smartphone use and practicing practices. I didn't put the right names in, I was just making it up. But anyway, we'll just put that in as well. And then this will be really useful when we come to do literature review or bibliography. And qualitative analysis software is a very useful tool for doing that because of the way that you can get into the article and highlight and tag sections of the text. and start comparing it to the themes and the concepts that are going to build up in your analysis of the data. Okay, so I'm done playing around with my sources for now. I'm going to click back on the main tab here to go back to the text. That's represented by these 3 lines here. And now we're going to actually look at some of the text of the data and start doing some coding. Now, Quirkos doesn't impose any particular analytical approach, but so you can use something like grounded theory, you could do framework analysis, you can do IPA, open axle coding, and I'll show you some of the different ways that you might do that. So the first of which is if you're doing some method which involves line-by-line coding or IPA, then what you probably start doing is kind of going line by line and then doing a kind of quick summary. So this is also used for in vivo coding. And the easiest way that you can do this is with the memo feature in Quirkos. And you use this just by selecting a piece of text that you want to write something about, and then drag and drop it onto this column here. This is the memo column. So I'll just pop it open so it's easiest for us to do. And basically this will create a new memo which has this text in it associated. I'm not sure quite why it's not popping up here. Something a bit funny with the layout today. There we go. So I'm just going to put in social media addiction ? So that might be one of the themes that I've looked at. And when you click on the memo there, it shows you what's coming, the piece of text that's associated with. Now anywhere where you see that text, that memo will be associated. So this is a really frequently used way of doing something like in vivo coding, open coding, axle coding, before you start creating any codes or themes. Just go through kind of every line of relevant text and say something about it. So frequent use, short frequent use. So we're going through and we're kind of getting a picture now of how this person is using your phone. And finally we're getting to something kind of interesting here. Oops. Phone creating conflict with family. So you can have as many memos as you like on any particular piece of text, but they can really help with that kind of open axial, line by line, and all those kind of other kind of emergent technologies. The other thing that you probably want to do eventually is then create some codes and themes. So it may be that you go through all your data, all your different sources, and do this kind of line by line approach, and then you start creating some codes which are based in them. And you can do that with this little plus button here. You can also do it by right-clicking anywhere and choosing Add Quirk. So I'm going to open up the memo column here and see what we've got. So social media addiction. So I think that's probably going to be a theme. Let's imagine that that's actually something which is quite common across our sources. So we'll create a new theme which is called social media. Actually, let's just create one called social media for now. And let's create another one called addiction. Oops. So you create a quirk by either clicking on that plus button, dragging some text onto the plus button, or right-clicking and choosing Add Quirk here. And then you choose the title of the quirk, so we've called this one addiction. There's space here to put in a longer description if it's not clear what you mean by that. So unable to control use, that's what I mean there. And then you can choose a different colour here if you want. So red, I guess addiction is a negative thing. And also the groups here. So this is another way that we can start grouping the sources, the codes together, sorry. So we'll click on save. And you now see we've got these two bubbles here. So one called addiction, that's flashing because we just created it, and another called social media. And we can click and drag and move these around anywhere on the canvas. And then if we click on one of the memos here, it will highlight that text for us. We can click and drag and put it onto a bubble. So we'll put that onto the social media code. And now that section of text has been coded to that. And we'll also, what we'll actually do also here is put it onto the addiction bubble as well. It's about these two things. And you'll now see that there are these color-coded stripes. So this is the kind of highlight column. And the stripe column shows us that this piece of text is associated with two different codes, one for addiction and one for social media. And so we can have any number of codes associated to just one piece of text. We've got this other one here, frequent use, I guess every hour or so. So maybe I'll put that onto the addiction bubble as well. And what you can see happening now is that the size is growing. So the size of the bubbles in Quirkos are relatively sized based on how much text you've coded to them. And what that means is you always get this kind of overview, this kind of outlay of what things are going on. Now, so again, we might keep through, going through, maybe this is about addiction as well, maybe this is also about social media. We may also add it to new things as well, close that memo column. We can also add text directly to plus buttons, so we'll create another theme here called frequency, because that's coming up a lot. We've got another bubble and that's already got that text in it. And now what we can do at any stage is double click on one of these buttons. So if we double click on addiction, we've now got the text, which is actually coming from all the different sources, although we've only coded Simon's here, about all the times that we've coded a section of text being about addiction. And you can see here the different things which that piece of text was coded to. And you can also copy these quotes. If you wanted everything people said about addiction, you can copy those. Press the copy button there, select them and copy them, and then paste them into wherever you're writing up your data or your section of your paper on addiction. That's really handy. So I'm going to click on the home button to go back to the main view here. And now I'm going to show you how you can start creating hierarchies with these bubbles. Because when you start to have lots of codes, this becomes really useful. So I'm going to, let's see, we'll add this text also to another bubble which we'll call WhatsApp, and another one which we'll call Facebook. Good. And so this piece of text is mentioning WhatsApp, it's mentioning Facebook, it's also mentioning addiction, it's also mentioning social media. So we're already starting to pull quite a lot of stuff out here. And what we can do though is we have this category of social media here. We can create these different platforms, these social media platforms, as subcategories. So we do that just by dragging and dropping bubbles on top of each other. So now WhatsApp has become a subcategory of social media, and Facebook has become a category of social media. And what we might actually do is create a subcategory. So we could pull that out, we could put WhatsApp as a subcategory of Facebook because it's a Facebook-owned platform. So we can have these subcategories and we can very quickly create groups of lots of different things. So we can have another one for Twitter, and so on. And so to code onto one of those lower categories, we just select the text, put it on the bigger one, the bubbles pop out, put it onto Facebook, that pops out, and then onto WhatsApp. So it's a very neat, quick way to code. And you'll see we've now coded that twice onto WhatsApp. So we might right click on one of those columns there and choose Remove Highlights. Great. Now I can see lots of people are watching, that's great. Do ask if you've got any questions or if there's anything in particular you want me to show at any time. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've created a new project, we've brought in some sources of data, we've categorized these with the source properties, we've created some codes, we've created some memos, we've done some line-by-line coding here as well. I'm just going to quickly do a little bit of coding in someone else's tab. So I'm going to click on to Chris's tab here. And he's saying, I think it's pretty normal now for children to have their own phones now. Simon's not too bad. So what's this about here? So this is about frequency. He doesn't use it very often. Simon's not too bad, so that's also kind of about frequency. But there's obviously new things coming up here. So what's normal? This is an interesting concept here. We'll call that green. And that's all about the father's conceptualization of what he considers to be normal about smartphone usage. So that might be a very interesting thing to pull up and compare from the different people. So if I look at the mother source here, Lynn. Let's see what she's saying here. Life, it's become a constant battle with something to get off the phone and get outside. Okay, so this person's really having trouble with this. So we'll create a new one here called conflict or problems or something like that. And then we'll drag and drop that text on there. Okay. So now we've started coding things across all of our different sources, and probably we'd keep going, adding new sources, adding new themes, doing more coding as we go along, until we've got some kind of basic level of understanding about what's coming out from the data. Of course, at any stage we can double click on the bubbles to see the text that's under them. Just go back up here to click up on the phone. Now I'm just going to quickly show you the groups property here. So it might get to a stage where we've got so many codes here, it starts to get a bit messy. And we've got quite distinct kind of things here. We've actually got some, I would say, some kind of basic level themes, some basic level codes, but also some kind of high level themes now. So what's normal. So we might create, sorry, wrong button. We'll click on the groups button here, and that allows us to create groups of codes. And those don't have to be hierarchical, like dragging and dropping the codes onto each other, but allows us to turn on and off some of the codes if we've got lots to look at. So one of these we might have, so you might use this for different types of codes, and you might also use it for kind of high level themes. So we could call this, maybe we'll call this open coding, and we'll create another one which is called axial. So the kind of themes which are starting to connect together. And then if we close that, we can put something like what's normal. If we right click on it and choose edit, we can put that into the axial code, and things like addiction, it's probably, that might be both, so that can go into both groups. Conflict, that probably is a high enough concept that we're going to use that both. Frequency, okay, that's pretty basic, so that's just going to go in there. And the social media ones, I think again that's probably just a kind of open code. But again, it's just up to how you categorize it and what kind of analytical approach you're doing. But now what that means is we can choose to just show the axial code, so these kind of higher level themes, or we could show just the open codes, or we can show all or both of them. So it's a very useful way to manage all those different sources, all those different codes. We start having lots and lots of bubbles all over the screen. But there are also other views which you can use here. So you can put these into alphabetical order, you can have it into a nice grid, and the more you add, the kind of puts it in a nice grid here. You can also have this kind of list view here, and this works in exactly the same way. You can drag and drop text onto it. You can double click to see the text which has been coded to it, but it's a bit more like the kind of traditional view that you'll get in some of the other software. And it is useful because all of the different subcategories are popped out, and also if you've got a large number of codes, it can be much easier to see. It can give you a lot more space to work with your text if you need it. Okay, so let's change the view back to the Quirk view because I like my bubbles. I'll just put it back onto the manual order, no auto arrange. So that's where I randomly dragged the bubbles. And I'll show you some of the other things that you can do by right clicking on these bubbles. So if we look at the addiction one here, for example, and right click, we've got some other options here. So the overview, that's what happens when we double click on it. That shows us all the text that's under it. The overlap view, that shows us how often the different codes occur together. So how often we've got one piece of text which has been coded to addiction and something else. What that shows us here in this kind of Venn diagram layout is that social media is the code that occurs most often with the addiction code, just in the way that we've coded it. Now in this data set, it's only because there's only 2 overlapping codes, because we've not done a lot of work on it. But you can see there's also a connection between addiction and WhatsApp and Facebook, not surprisingly, and frequency, but addiction is not seen to be normal, and nobody's saying that they're addicted to Twitter so far. Clicking on any of these bubbles will show you the text. Hovering the mouse over it will show you where that comes from. So you've got these overlapping codes from Simon and Chris together. So I'll click on the home button, so you can do that for any of the bubbles here. You also right click, I've shown you the edit already, so you can change the color at any stage, change what the quirk is called. We can also merge codes together. So if we've got two themes which are too similar and we decide we want to put their contents together, we can do that. We also duplicate a code. So if we want to have, to start splitting that up, we've got addiction and maybe we want to have actually just phone addiction and something else, just kind of like screen addiction in general, then we can do that. But for everything we do, we've got full undo and redo operations in Quirkos, so we can remove that and go back to the way we had before with the buttons at the top. We've also got a last option here, which is to delete the code. So if we wanted to delete something, it's gone, all its coding is gone, but no worries, we can just click on the undo button and everything comes back. Great. So what I'm going to show you now is some of the ways that we can start using those source properties and some of the other things in data to filter and sort through the data. So one of the most useful tools to do that is the query view here. So we'll just click on the query button. And what that gives us here is this view which shows us a list of the different things that we can run a query on. So any of the source properties we have here, that's where we'll start. But also if you're working as a team, you can see work done by particular people. So coding's done by particular people, code's created by particular people. When particular work was done, you can search by group, and you can also search by the title of the source. So I'm going to click on property. We've got property age, that's not a very useful one. We'll have family role, dad, and see what that shows. And what that shows is this person's talking about frequency and what's normal. So that's the text that we've coded to all the people that we have for the family role that equals dad. If we change the family role to parent, now you'll see we should have some stuff from Chris and also from Lynn as well, so from some of the other sources as well. But we can also split the screen in half and do a side-by-side comparison. So it might be interesting to look at the difference between what the dad is saying and family role, mother, the mum is saying. So click update. Okay, so again, we've not done very much coding here. The father is interested in what they consider to be normal. The mother is talking a lot more about conflict. So we can see that already quite easily in the text, with just as a quick read. But there's definitely the mother is having more problems with their child having smartphone addiction. Their father doesn't seem to think it's a big problem. So that's quite interesting, and it'd be interesting to see how that occurs off different families if we start to have more data in here. Now we can also combine these queries. So we might want to have, for example, it could be really useful just to see family role of people who were above a certain age. So maybe everyone that was over 30. So fathers over 30 compared to fathers over 40. You might also want to look at the source type, so just see results from interviews. Remember, we've got that smartphone article in there as well, though we didn't code anything in that so far. And this could be a very powerful way of just looking to see how much we have from different groups and different subsets of the data. And again, wherever we get any of these results, we can export them as a report here, and we can also copy and paste those quotations and put them in something like Word. So the query view is very useful for exploring the data once we've done some coding. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some of the ways that we can look at the data, export the data, play with it, and do some kind of further analysis and exploration. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you just a couple of other quick things. There is a chat functionality in Quirkos you can also use for your own reflexive journal. So while you go on and do your coding, you might very well want to talk about the different things that you're finding in the data, and just keep a kind of log, a diary or a reflexive journal for yourself about the analysis process. So you might say, just started with project analysis. Hurrah! And then you might say, interesting differences already between mums and dads. So, everything is logged here. You can remove things which have horrible spelling mistakes in, and you can see the name of the person that made that edit. This is especially useful because you can use this in live mode when you're working in the cloud, and you can kind of use this to kind of chat and discuss different things if you're working as part of a team. So the chat functionality is just operated by that little chat button in the bottom left. There's also a search here, which is for searching the codes. So if we couldn't find our addiction code, we start typing addiction and it comes up. We can't find what's happened to WhatsApp. Aha, it's under social media and Facebook. There it is. So that's very useful for searching through the codes. There's also a text search as well. So we can put in a search like phone, and then that will show us all the results of all the different times that the word phone or smartphone. So it's showing a subset of that. If we want only the whole word, we can restrict that so it won't show smartphones, it'll only show when people say phone, phone use, phone. And we can code directly from this. So if we found something interesting here, that's about addiction, we can click and drag and put that on there as well. And we can also use these ... buttons here to load more of the source around the text. Drag and drop that onto the addiction bubble there. So we can code directly from these results, and that's super useful if there's particular phrases. Now there's also a synonyms database built in, which is sometimes useful because it can allow you to choose different words which might be relevant here. So we've got, different things are showing up. So we've got call, so we might want to have that in there. Call up, earpiece, headphone, ring, sound. So different meanings of the word telephone. It's a little bit dated, it doesn't have smartphone in there, which is slightly odd, but there you go. So you can use this, you can choose which ones are call, ring, telephone as a noun and a verb, and then you can include those in as well. So probably get somebody saying call, telephone, ring, inquiring. So yeah, call, recall, emergency call. Yeah, so again, we've got lots of different things coming up in our text search, and that can really help us filter through. I'm just going to close that with a little cross on the magnifying glass there. Right, let's look at some of the outputs that we can create from Quirkos. Most of these are under the export button here. The first one is the report. The report is basically the kind of the default export of everything which is useful and interesting about the project. And it's customizable, so you can choose which sections you want to appear in your report. So on the left we've got this preview, so that's what the report will look like when we finish. And on the right, a series of options of what we want to go in there, and these are just tick boxes. So all these different sections we can remove or we can include. You'll see things like it's got a list here of all the different codes, if they've got parents or grandparents to them, they've got a description in there, who created them and when, and how many codes are under them. We've also got these graphs of the properties, and we've also got these images of the canvas. So if you want these as visualizations, you can just click and drag those into Word or PowerPoint or something like that. You also right-click to save the image. And then you've got the actual text. So text sorted by theme is the default. So everything under the social media theme, everything under the addiction theme, everything under the frequency theme. And then you've also got the option here to change that around. So you might want to have everything text by source. So that would show you everything in the smartphone article, everything that we coded to Simon. So you can change all these different options, and when you're happy with how they are, you can save it as a Word file, you can save it as a web page, you can print it out obviously, or save as a PDF file. And all of those are super useful. So you can get kind of quick view. And there is the PDF of our report. So that's very useful if you want to share the report with someone else or kind of capture a snapshot at any stage. Now there's also here in the export options the word cloud. And that basically shows you how frequently different words were used. You've probably seen these kind of visualizations before. Lots of different ways that you can customize them, which sources to include, the different shape that you want for the word cloud, the size of the words, etc., etc. So you can have lots of fun playing with that, and then you can save it as an image or a web page when it's exactly how you want it to look. You've also got this spreadsheet option here, and that allows you to export the data as a CSV file. You can open it in Excel or LibreOffice, and that will let you see how many times you've used a certain code, and brings out all the data in ways that you can kind of do more quantitative analysis if you wanted to do that. You've also got these options here to export the sources as a Word document. And what this does is let you create a standard Word document from the transcripts of your sources, which have been coded and highlighted so that you can see how you interpreted them. So we didn't code anything in the smartphone article, so we'll leave that one behind. Oh, we did a little bit. But if we start looking here, okay, so here's Simon's source. Here's how we've coded it. So social media addiction, Facebook, WhatsApp. So if you're used to doing it by coding in Word or Excel, or doing it by highlighters, this is a very good way to kind of go back to that, see how it would look, print it out, read it away from the computer, and then you can see kind of exactly how it's coded. It's also really useful to share with someone that doesn't have any qualitative analysis software themselves. Because even if they're not using Quirkos, you can export your project using the RefiQDA standard, and that will come into any qualitative software package that supports it, and that's all the major ones now. So NVivo, MaxQDA, Atlas TI, Transanna, Deduce, all of these will support the RefiQDA standard and more. And you can also save just the sources of the project, so if you want someone else to do their own coding, or just the structure of the project, so just the framework. You've created a standard framework here that you want to apply to different sources. So that's the basics of doing the export, because we really kind of feel that qualitative software is kind of a middle part. So you're now going to get to the stage where you want to kind of export, bring sections of your text in when you start writing it up. And it's a very useful tool to help you kind of explore, manage your qualitative data. We hope it's very visual, very easy to use, but we're always here for help and support if you need it. You can contact us on Twitter, you can contact us via our email, and you'll see here all the different ways to get in contact with us. We do have a phone line. At the moment it's difficult because of ongoing restrictions for us to answer that phone, so as a default please drop us an email first, and we'll always be happy to call you back or contact you via Zoom or Skype or something like that, or however you want to get in touch with us. So do go to www.quirkos.com, download the software for yourself, give it a trial. The trial, there's no limits on it, it's free, has all the features for exactly 14 days, and you will also find when you come to look at the license prices that we are by quite a long way a lot cheaper than most of our competitors. So a very competitive and affordable way, especially for students, to get on. So our permanent license is here. So these don't expire. So not just for 1 year or 2 year, which most of our competitors offer, but this is a permanent license for as long as you need it. Especially important if you've got a PhD that's just going on and on. Or if you want to get the data off after you've finished your PhD, of course. So yeah, that's everything for Quirkos. Do ask in the chat if you've got any questions or if there's anything else you'd like me to cover. But otherwise that's everything what we're going to do for the tutorial webinar today. Don't forget to subscribe. So we've got new video tutorials on using bits of Quirkos, but also general advice on qualitative analysis, and those are proving really popular. Like and comment and engage with us on social media as well. Download and give Quirkos a try. Thanks very much for dropping in today.